So I actually didn't hate Joker Folie. I do. I mean, I'm not coming here to pretend like it's good. It's not good, but I do feel like there's some interesting ideas that were in there, some interesting explorations of the character, but the film ultimately couldn't get out of its own way. And really, when I left, I felt like they'd have been better off making a Two-Face movie because there was two competing movies that I was watching, and each was to the detriment of the other. So, how we're going to do this review, I've never done a proper review on the channel before. I'm going to keep the first part of it spoiler free. So, if you haven't seen it yet, you can watch the first part. We're going to talk about the overall kind of themes and the overall direction, and we're going to talk about the individual performances as well. And then, right at the end, we'll get to spoilers. We're going to talk about the ending. We're going to talk about the plot specifics. But don't worry, I will clearly mark when I'm about to talk spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can click off at that point. Or if you just want to get to that discussion, timestamps will be down below and you can get straight to the ending discussion. So the first point to start on is, did this film really need a sequel? Judging by the movie itself, Todd Phillips, I don't think thought it needed a sequel. And I'd have been happy with either. You know, I really loved the first one, and that would have worked for me as a standalone movie. I had no issues if they were just one and done. That would have been absolutely fine. But you know, there was a lot of potential there. There was a lot of story to tell. And with this kind of being the trial and the breaking down of Joker himself, you could have done a lot with that concept. If you consider overall thematically, if society and if the system created Joker, you know, a lot was made in the first movie that, you know, he never got the help that he wanted, couldn't get his medication, couldn't get his therapy sessions. And so, if he was created by the system, how then does the system respond to him doing what he did in the first film? Really, this film is just kind of the fallout of the first film, and I found that quite interesting. Again, more focus was on Arthur and who Arthur is as a person, and trying to contrast that with who Joker is as a person, and try to make them two different entities, which was something which was heavily discussed in the trial scene and in some of the interview scenes with Steve Coogan as well. So, I mean, I'm not mad that they took a crack at a second one. I mean, it does kind of reek a little bit of, you know, Warner Brothers didn't want the first movie to get made, so they didn't take a lot of risk, but then they didn't get a lot of the reward when the film went on to make $1 billion and win an Oscar. So it's kind of like, oh shit, we missed our gravy train here. Quick, get another one, get another one. And I do think part of the film is Todd Phillips kind of lashing out at that and kind of acting out at that. But it is, again, the execution always is to the detriment of the movie and to the detriment of what I think are some good ideas in there, which I'll discuss later, mainly in the spoiler section. So quickly to go over the performances and have a look at the performances that are there. Firstly, Joaquin Phoenix. For me, he's great in this. He doesn't really have the standout moments that he did in the first one, like the subway scene or obviously the Murray Franklin interview scene, which was amazing. But he still gets some great moments. There's the courtroom scene with Gary Puddles. That's a great scene, and there's also the kind of interview scene as well. Again, I think he wasn't given as good material to work with as the first one, so you're not going to see those scenes really kind of go viral and take over like you did with the first one, where those scenes were all over the place and that you get what you deserve line was everywhere. The writing wasn't as impactful as the first one, but I do feel like Joaquin Phoenix really still went there with Arthur and went there with Joker, and you do, as a result, get some great scenes. But then moving on to Lady Gaga, I think Lady Gaga really got done dirty with this movie. Particularly when you think of, if you look back at some of the trailers, a lot of the scenes featuring her that were in the trailers and in the promotional material were then not in the final movie. And while I was watching the film, you kind of get the feeling like she's just here to sing. It's kind of becoming a bit of a meme now. I've seen a couple of memes about it. Particularly, there's a part in the movie when um, Joker says, "Oh, will you just stop singing? Like I just want to talk." And I felt like in the end they stripped out a lot of the character work for Gaga's Lee, which again, having a different take on Harley Quinn is fine, is great. Obviously, the Arthur is a completely different take on Joker from what were in the comics, but that was never really explored. It's all very superficial, and a little bit of her motivations and why she was doing certain things would have been a lot better. But no, you just get her kind of singing the songs, which again I don't think is really what Gaga probably signed up for. She wanted to do the acting as well. I was a bit disappointed by Gaga's Lee or Harley in this. I think she did well with what she was given, and she was kind of done dirty in the end. When I feel like a lot of her stuff is probably on the cutting room floor, and she's just there to sing. Which I'll get into the songs. This is really where the film fell apart for me. The two ideas of having a standalone sequel of the trial of Joker combined with this jukebox musical. Now, this was in the trailers, and what I thought the musical aspect was going to be was it was going to lean into the fantasy of Joker. So, in the trailers, and in the movie, there's the one musical scene where it's like Hotel Arkham, and they're on a rooftop, and then it cuts to them kind of dancing in all the carnage of Arkham, and that's what I thought the musical numbers were going to be. I thought there was going to be a lot less of them, and I thought they were all going to be kind of in Arthur's head or Harley's head or their kind of shared delusion, their shared fantasy. I did not think singing it would be acknowledged in the movie that they were singing. There's another scene as well where Joker's tap dancing, and that's done really well. Those are really the only two musical numbers that I think worked. The rest of them really didn't work. I kind of wonder if, rather than thinking, oh, a musical is the best way to tell this story, Todd Phillips maybe went, I want to make this a musical just because it seems like a good idea. And a jukebox musical at that. I know it worked quite well in the first one with Joker singing, and the songs they used just as the soundtrack. Get a lot of those songs again in this one, and it doesn't hit the same. And it happens so much. It must happen at least 8 or 9 times. Someone breaks out in song. I've heard talk of online people leaving, and that it, no, not, that didn't happen in my screening, but people you could feel the tension, like when someone kind of started singing, and it would just really like people. You could kind of feel like people exhale and groan, and it really was a lot. And I think this really was a big detriment to the movie. Like I said, if they'd just done less and had it as a fantasy kind of thing, it would have been really good. And again, I think that idea is a great idea, but it wasn't executed nearly as well as I thought it was going to be. Now, quickly before I jump into the spoiler bit, there's a couple of other performances I want to just kind of highlight without going into specifics. First of all, Brendan Gleeson as the Arkham guard was really great. I'm a big fan of Brendan Gleeson ever since stuff like In Bruges and things like that are really great. And recently, the Banshees of Inisherin was really great. So seeing him really kind of sell what the guards do, and him being kind of jokey with Arthur, but then being able to just kind of turn it when he needed to was really great. Again, I've spoken about the courtroom scene with Gary Puddles from the first one, Lee Gill, the actor. I thought that was the best scene of the movie for me. Again, without going into the details, but just the performances and the back and forth between Gary and Arthur was really great. And Steve Coogan, probably a bit blasphemous because I'm British. I don't particularly care for Steve Coogan generally, but in this he was good. Yeah, he was the interviewer, and he came in and was supposed to kind of poke Arthur a little bit. And I thought he did a really good job of being a bit snarky and not really listening to what Arthur had to say and getting his agenda across. So the supporting performances around it are really good as well. That's something that I do want to point out. So here's your spoiler warning. We're going to get into spoilers now. Particularly, we're going to talk about the ending. So if you haven't seen the film yet, thanks a lot for checking out the video so far. I hope you come back when you've seen it and share your thoughts down below. But let's just get straight to the ending. So I had an inkling that Arthur was going to die in this. There was an interview with Todd Phillips where he said, "Oh, I'm definitely not doing any more. We're definitely not." And I was like, "Oh, why would you say that? That's a bit weird. It's a bit definitive." But the way I thought they were going to go about it was how throughout the trial they made a big deal that Harvey Dent and everyone was going to go for the death penalty. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. They're actually going to execute Arthur, which again, like I said before, if you look at Joker in this instance as being maybe not created, but enabled by society and by the system now, he goes on to do those things. You could argue because he didn't get the help that he needed. He didn't get his medication or his therapy and things. And had he got the help that he needed, things would have been different. And how does the system then deal with someone like that, even though it's partially their creation? And I thought, well, oh, kill them would be interesting. So I thought you could have really done something thematically there and really something more dramatic with Arthur. He gets failed at every turn, and keeping that sympathetic point of view where, if it's him dying in the street, you'd step right over him and then take it that step further. Oh, they actually kill him, but in the end, he obviously gets shanked by. I wouldn't go as far as to say a random inmate, but that person was just a background character. And then I actually missed this the first time round, but then they do go on and carve a smile in their face, a bit Heath Ledger-esque. I think the message there was that Joker is more of a movement, and it's more about the people involved. It's not just Arthur and not just one person, which I thought was, again, strange they would do that when I feel like they had a lot going, um, particularly as well in the courtroom scene. The explosion where he escapes was all a bit silly. Um, there'd been nothing like that so far, and you think that you never really shown how they are able to plant such a big bomb in a huge courthouse in a big city with a trial that's probably being watched nationwide. It just happens, and then obviously Arthur runs away from the people that saved him to Lee. And again, the Lee, is she pregnant? Is she not pregnant? Are they going to be together? The resolution to that whole thing didn't really hit for me. I thought they were going to have a last kind of song and dance thing on the stairs, but that never really happens. I think that was filmed, but again, never happens. And again, the scene in the showers, I know that's quite controversial. Obviously, it's implied there's a sexual assault. It's not actually shown. And again, that was quite jarring because with Brendan Gleeson, like I talked about before, he's jokey and that, but then he kind of turns and isn't very nice. But there's a gulf between not being nice to someone and then also sexually assaulting them. Jarring and kind of out of nowhere, and not something I particularly would have done. They could have just shown him kind of get beaten like they did in the kind of animation that opens it, and the guards beating him. I thought perhaps what they were going to do is they were going to show the beating and then cut back to the animation and show that beating as well. So yeah, that's it for this Joker, I guess, and that's it for these movies. To be honest, I'm quite happy to leave it there. Again, there's some good parts about this film. Another thing as well, I don't know if people noticed, but I felt like when the courtroom exploded, you saw half of Harvey's face covered in blood, which I thought was a little visual nod. The trial scene with Gary Puddles was very interesting, particularly when Gary is saying, you were the only person that was nice to me. You were the only person that didn't make fun of me, and now I'm scared all the time. I'm scared now. The realizations that Joker made there, I thought were excellent. All for nothing in the end, and I feel like they had this potential and they threw it away. You can kill him off, but the execution, I would have preferred, again, no pun intended, I would have preferred for him to get the death penalty and show the state killing him. That would have been a more powerful message, I think, rather than just getting shanked by some guy. Probably the guards in on it as well. They say, oh, there's a visitor, but you never see the visitor. I have to imagine there probably wasn't a visitor. They just kind of said that to lure him out. So, yeah, good ideas, some good things in there. Ultimately ruined by some really poor choices there, which meant that the film did miss quite spectacularly for me. But I don't want to belabor the point. I don't want to. I know there's a lot of talk about it, and I did want to point out there are good aspects to the movie, but it just didn't stick the landing for me. So, hope you enjoyed that review. If you've got your own thoughts about Joker, leave them down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. My current goal is to get to 100 subscribers. I think that's achievable. If you'd like to let me achieve that, I'd really appreciate it. And I will catch you all in the next one.